Well, praise the Lord and welcome to Sun Life Broadcasting today. I'm going to introduce my panel today, and that is Jim Nations.
Thank you. Good morning.
Hi, Jim. It's good to have you today. Did you have any announcements that you know?
Not at this time.
You don't. We have a special guest today, and yesterday I shared with you some things right at the beginning of the program concerning sustainable communities. Many of you had never even heard the term and did not have any idea what I was talking about, and others have. And that's why I asked our special guest, Tom DeWeese, to be with us on the program today. I've been reading a number of his articles, and Tom has been with me on our programming before, especially on our radio program. And he's also been with me a couple of times, I think, since we've had the television network, but there's absolutely no one that would be any more qualified to help our audience understand when we mention sustainable developments, exactly what are we talking about. Now, Tom has been, he is actually, for 40 years, Tom has been a grassroots activist, writer, and publisher, and he has always advocated a firm belief in man's need to keep moving forward. He is the author of the DeWeese Report. He is also, you can find a lot of his articles on WW News with Views. He has his own organization that he has been working with, and I'm trying to find the name of it here. He's going to I'll tell you what, I'm going to introduce Tom DeWeese to our listening audience today, and I'm going to let him share with you. Also, Tom has written a book that has just recently been released that we're going to be sharing with you some information about, and I would hope that you would want to go and purchase it. Now, I'm going to, at this time, introduce our special guest, Tom DeWeese, with us. And Tom, I made a mess of introducing you today, and I apologize for that. But you are, your organization is the American Policy Center. Aren't I correct on that?
You're correct, Francis. Absolutely. Yeah.
Okay. Now, you have been involved in this for many, many years, writing articles, speaking publicly on radio, television, anywhere that you were invited to speak. I know that. And you have been trying to help get the message out and make American citizens aware of what is happening in our government. Now, I found, after we talked yesterday, I went and started looking through all my books, found your book, and was able to read most of it last night. And Tom's new book is Now Tell Me I Was Wrong. Why such a title as that, Tom?
Well, because exactly what you just said, that I've been writing articles on issues that we're facing today. Over the last 15 years or so, I've been writing about the transformation of our education system. I've been writing about sustainable development and the United Nations influence on what we really are calling a wrenching transformation of our country. I've been writing about illegal immigration. I've been writing about all these kinds of issues. And while I did it, people weren't really grasping it. Government was moving forward, and people weren't understanding what was happening. Today, now, we've got a very angry country, and people are trying to figure out, where did this anger come from? What's happening? What's happening to our country? And these articles that I wrote were kind of a history of all that.
I was trying to show your book on television, and I'm asking, yeah, they've got a close-up of it there now. Now tell me I was wrong. Yeah. And so this is just, you compiled a number of your articles, or most of your articles, together for the book, which is excellent, Tom, I might say.
Well, thank you. You read it all in one night. That's amazing.
I didn't say all. I said approximately.
Really,
I was familiar with a lot of the articles in it.
Sure, yeah. I mean, they are things I've written over these years about global warming, all this kind of stuff. And, as I wrote them, I was derided. I was told I had a tinfoil hat, all this kind of things. Now they're the front page things that are happening today. And so if you really want to know where these things came from, why we have so much anger and frustration in this country right now, this book will give you a little bit of a history of where that stuff came from.
Yes. Tell us about the American Policy Center.
I founded it in 1986 to support issues like private property rights and personal privacy and national sovereignty, and we worked on a lot of education issues, and that has put us right up in front of the radical environmental movement that I believe is transforming our entire society. Puts us right up against the United Nations. I was invited about 4 years ago to debate at Cambridge University in England before a 200-year-old debating society the issue of the United Nations, which was quite an experience. Mm-hmm. So these are the kind of things that we do, and for the last 18 years or so, we have been really heavily focused on this issue of sustainable development and Agenda 21 and why it is a real danger to our free society.
Okay, let's start with the beginning of this. What is a sustainable development or community? Because, you know, a lot of my people, or a lot of the people that's listening to Sunlight Broadcasting, they're not, and probably most of America would not be familiar with what you're talking about.
Yeah, it's just beginning to be noticed by people and understand some things. Let me back up a little bit where this came from.
Okay.
There have been several programs, particularly through the United Nations, going clear back into the 1970s, where there was a move to merge the United States became the only world power when the Soviet Union fell. And to a lot of totalitarians in the world, that was a pretty frightening experience, because the United States literally is the only nation on earth that is based on the idea of private property rights and individual freedom and limited government. All the rest of the nations on earth are really built on the idea that government tells you what your rights are, and that the private property really doesn't even exist, and that's one reason there's so much poverty. Well, these kind of forces that are involved in the United Nations look at the United States with great horror to think that we would be the leading power in the world. And so they started putting a lot of programs together to try to get the United States to kind of merge in or harmonize with the rest of the world under their ideas. And, of course, Americans weren't buying that, and they had to come up with a way to get us to voluntarily accept these very socialist ideas. And what they came up with was the idea of environmental Armageddon, that if we would throw our liberties on the bonfire if we had to protect the planet. So all these programs began to come together under the idea of it's for the protecting the environment. And if you begin to look at these programs, you will see that they're really anti-private property, anti-limited government, anti-individual freedom, and using the environment as the excuse. And that is what a sustainable community is. It is a top-down control of our communities. In other words, international programs. The particular one was 1992, the Earth Summit in Rio de Janeiro. A document came out of there called Agenda 21. Agenda 21 is a blueprint for what Al Gore called the wrenching transformation of America away from what he called the horrors of the 20th century industrial revolution, and completely changing our way of life, and everything based on the environment. And I know that is a swallow there to understand what I just said, but we're talking about transforming our entire society. And today, where you hear about this, the term sustainable development is the catchphrase, and you will hear in your communities comprehensive development plans. You'll hear about historic preservation. Everywhere you watch your TV or whatever, what you're hearing is go green, go green. All of these programs that you hear about with those names are sustainable development and Agenda 21. And this begins to control energy use. It controls water use. These are programs in your own local community. Your local county commissioners and city councilmen are putting these plans in place, and these plans come directly from documents and from organizations out of the United Nations, and they are curtailing our energy use. Gasoline now is skyrocketing to $4 a gallon. the sustainabilists say, well, then that means that we've got to have communities where you don't have to drive, where you can use your bicycle, where you can walk to places, because energy costs so much. Well, the reason energy costs so much is because they are not allowing us, through environmental reasons, excuses, to drill American oil, and we're dependent on oil from very unstable countries around the world, and so they've created a false sense of or a false shortage of energy. They're focusing on water use and curtailing our ability to have water. Curtailing energy means that bureaucrats come into your home and do energy audits, and they determine that you have to have new roofs, you have to have new windows in your home, you have to have new energy efficient appliances. And in Oakland, California, the average cost of a home there to comply with these kind of regulations is about $35,000.
That's just to comply with the regulations?
Just to comply with it is the average for each home.
We are all seeing this green movement rising, I mean drastically. And you're saying that this is all a part of what the government and the UN is calling a sustainable community.
Yeah, that is the excuse for it.
Now let me ask a question.
Sure.
Yesterday I showed to my audience, and I'd like for television to put it back up on the screen, a sustainable community drawing that I had. I looked at it according to what the United Nations had, and in fact I was reading one of Barrett Coase's articles, and there was this little picture, and so it was too small to blow up and put on the screen, so I had my artist look at it and draw a drawing of it. Now, if you live in this community and you ride a bicycle, does that mean that people have to live for the rest of their lives in that community because they have no transportation to get around to go anywhere else?
Well, there's not a regulation that says you can't leave, but if you don't have a car,
vehicle, you can't leave.
You can't. I mean, if you don't have the means to it. In San Francisco, for example, they're building these kind of communities. They don't have parking lots. They don't have garages because they don't want you to have cars. And they talk about setting up light rail train systems, but these aren't
we've
working.
heard the president trying to do that right in this present day and time that we're living, and everybody's wondering, well, what do we need a rail system for? So you're saying this is for future plans? Yeah,
that's a major part of it. They want you to to be able to walk to where they want these communities. Like I'm sure the picture that you're putting up, the idea is that you, in a sustainable community, that you have basically high-rise buildings, because they don't believe suburban housing is sustainable. Your individual home, they want you to live in these high-rise buildings. On the first floor would be the stores. On the middle floors would be businesses, offices. And on the top floors would be where you'd live. You never touch the ground unless you go out into the little park that they provide across the street. So the idea is that you never travel. You don't have cars. And if you do want to travel a distance, then you would take these light rail trains. That's the utopia of what they're looking at, and they use the excuse as to why to build these kinds of things is because energy costs are rising. I was just in a meeting with some of these people yesterday, and they're talking about, well, energy costs are rising, so people need to be able to ride their bikes to where they want to go and not be able to have to pay all that high energy costs. But again, it is a self-fulfilling prophecy, if you will, if they create policies that don't allow us to get cheap energy, and so they cut all that off.
Well, the president says no drilling, so I mean we're helpless. And if you go and we've got rich oil reserves here in the United States, and they won't allow the environmentalists and the president. They say no, you can't drill there.
Yeah, and the truth is, the United States. But they can
give how much, 8 million or billion to Brazil to drill for oil?
Yeah, see, that's what we do. And that's another aspect I'll talk about here in a second. But the truth is the United States has more energy reserves than any nation on Earth, and they're just discovering shale oil and gas that is available, and it's available in literally every single state